Pinch me. Pinch me, somebody. I don't know what's happening today. I really don't know what's happening here today. This is just the most outstanding Italian Grand Prix you could ask for in so many ways. It's a win for the sport. It might not be a win for a certain Max Verstappen or a certain Lewis Hamilton, but a win for Formula One. And there is a ton to dissect, ton to analyze, a ton to pick out and just maybe ask those critical questions. And we've got so many of them here today, thanks to all of you on social media as well. So, what's on the agenda today? What's on the menu? We firstly just ask, how good were McLaren and Daniel Ricciardo? So many more questions to ask on this. So much more to discuss about Lando Norris as well. Moreover, the defining moment of the season, analysed from all the angles. So many questions again. I say this so many times, but that's what the thing is for today. The stats review by Sundaram also comes up to you. Of course, F1 Stats Guru is what he's known as. We speak about Sergio Perez's squandered chance to win the Italian GP. Ferrari, of course, thwarted at home, and all the other misses from the Italian GP. At the same time, we will answer all your questions from all of our social media handles. So thank you so much for sending them in. Let's dive down into it. Second time in 2 years that we've seen a midfield team come up and take a win in Monza. You see, the excitement is getting to me. So let's not wait. Let's actually understand all of this right here on the Inside Line F1 podcast and Pits To Podium. Welcome along, folks. Welcome into the Inside Line F1 podcast and Pits To Podium. My name is Somal Arora, joined by Kunal Shah, the former marketing head of the Force India F1 team. Breathe in and exhale. It's not a yoga class. We genuinely needed to do that, Kunal. This is just fundamentally the most crazy Formula One race I've seen in a while. And the best part is we get to say this all the time now.
We do. And for once, it's actually not because of, a battle or a crash between Max and Lewis itself. It was just also because of that mighty display by Daniel Ricciardo. And I must say, I put this out on Twitter. What's actually fun? What's fun is hearing Daniel Ricciardo on radio. What's even more fun is hearing Daniel Ricciardo on radio after he's won a race. And he's won a race. He's really been waiting for this one. And let's put this out there. Two things immediately on my mind, Samuel. First is Daniel Ricciardo won this on merit. It's going to sound as though Max and Lewis were fighting for the lead of the race and they, crashed out and Daniel scored the win. But no, he won this on merit. That's the first thing. And the second very, very important thing, I don't think we've seen the last of Max and Lewis coming together, especially this season, which actually tells me we need to celebrate Daniel's win over the crash that has happened. So let the crash and the penalty and all our observations and opinions not oversee the fact that Daniel Ricciardo won a race for McLaren. And then, of course, McLaren scored a 1-2. And those McLarens were unovertakeable. They've literally made me introduce a word in the English dictionary.
You shall not pass. That's what Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris were saying. We will discuss the crash, but in a few minutes. Let's first celebrate this win. And let's first talk about how good were Ricciardo and McLaren and also Lando Norris. If there's one moment that generally defines it, it was Lando Norris's bravery on the restart when he just went on the grass and actually passed Charles Leclerc right there. That was, in a way, symbolic of the new McLaren. Young, unafraid of whoever comes up against him. Even though it's the opponent's home race, we couldn't care. That pass was symbolic, and you're so right with it. Ricciardo was ahead, and Ricciardo was leading. Firstly, it was, of course, going to go in their direction because Hamilton, it was a bit of a variable to see where he would cycle out, but Verstappen had a slow stop, remember. Don't forget he was in the pit lane for 10 seconds. In the pit box, for 10 seconds, and Hamilton for 4. It would have been in Ricciardo's hands anyway. This is just stunning. And the best thing I can say, Kunal, is maturity all the way around from the entire team today.
It was. And, you spoke of Norris's bravery. I think even Norris's maturity. After a point, he realized that he needs to play the team game. I am sure it hurts, even though he's celebrating the 1 and 2. I'm sure it hurts because he's been the lead driver at McLaren. We've seen that this season. He's been the driver that's been bringing the podium and the fantastic results while everyone's, waiting for Daniel Ricciardo to find form. And then suddenly when the first race win comes for the team, it's Daniel Ricciardo. And I'm not surprised. Lando actually said post race that I had the pace to win the race.
Ooh.
That's obvious. He's a racing car driver, but phenomenal teamwork. I'm totally for the fact that, McLaren used team orders to secure a 1-2 finish rather than go and get their drivers completely crazed up or give them the opportunity of doing something completely crazy. And they're in the battle with Ferrari to win on Ferrari's home turf and to take the lead again, in for P3. I think those scenes we will remember forever. And, going back to the 90s and the 2000s, when you were either a Ferrari fan or a McLaren fan, if you have stayed along with Formula One and you're still a fan, there's a very high chance that you would have loved today's McLaren win over Ferrari, and that you love McLaren's recovery that they've been going through the hybrid turbo era, Samuel.
It's outstanding. McLaren's first 1-2 since 2010 Canada. That's a long time. McLaren's first win since Brazil 2012. We were always wondering, when will it arrive? Will it arrive with Honda? Will it arrive with Renault? It's finally come with Mercedes. And I've got two thoughts on my mind. Firstly, on Lando Norris. His mom will be proud today. His parents will be proud, because you always want to see your children be good team players, be good people on the whole. And Norris was. He phrased it very smartly. He said, what is important for us right now? I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he got the idea. He said something around the lines of, what's the best for the team right now? And the team said, just staying where you are. And Kunal, it's firstly astounding just to take a step back and realize that he's able to paraphrase his questions so well while driving on the limit at a circuit like Monza, which is known to be very demanding. But secondly, just the fact that there's this sense of maturity that even though you could be the selfish one going out there to take the win, you don't. You smartly played for the team, and then knowing what the game is. I think, if anything, it gives him more reputation in the paddock instead of just going and taking that win. But the second thing, Monza, for the second year running, Kunal, has just proven to be a ground of redemption for midfield drivers looking to get something up on Red Bull again, back from the past. Isn't it outstanding? It's crazy. But question is generally Ricciardo back now? It's one thing that everyone might be wondering, but what do you reckon now?
I'll put it this way. He's been close to Norris all through this weekend. Yes, Norris was the faster driver, and we say this purely by seeing the qualifying result. But it's not that the gap was what the gap has been in the last 10, 12 races. The gap was much closer, or probably the closest that I can remember between Ricciardo and Norris. That's point number one. And point number two, eventually, Ricciardo jumped him in the sprint on Saturday. That gave him, the opportunity to be on the front row for Sunday. He just made his luck work. And the question to ask, Samuel, is Daniel Ricciardo back? Well, we don't know yet. It's just been one race since, we've seen him actually do what we've remembered. Like Ricciardo said, I never left. I just stepped on the side. The phenomenal race message, the post-race message. I think we should make a T-shirt out of it. I never left. I just stepped on the side. Whatever he said. But yeah, so this result will definitely buoy Ricciardo's confidence, Ricciardo's recovery, Ricciardo's settling into McLaren, all the questions that were suddenly asked, is Norris getting the better of him, and so on and so forth. Then it's definitely going to put a positive spring and a step in him, in the races to come. It's going to help him, take the bad results come his, a little more lightly on himself. And I liked how he said, he used the August break to recover his batteries, to recharge. And let's remember, it's just the summer break was just 3 weeks ago, and suddenly we are 3 races in. So the races have been coming to you much faster than before, right? And that's exactly probably what happened to Daniel Ricciardo as well. So I think he's back, but let's wait and see how much is he actually back.
That's such a good point. And our GP Prediction League winners, more on today's competition in a little bit, but they said that they expect Ferrari to beat McLaren because they've got 2 drivers. Well, the tide has turned around finally. So let's actually go to a few social media questions that we've got from all of you, our dear listeners and viewers. And thank you so much for sending them in. We get to McLaren first. There's one from Aryan Singh. Can we say that McLaren robbed Norris of a potential maiden win? Team orders, but still. And of course, the second one from Jaren Joseph, who's asking, did Verstappen go easy on Ricciardo? Let's answer these first, Kunal, before we move on to speaking more about that crash. What do you reckon? Did McLaren rob him in a way? I don't think they did, right? It was a conscious decision by Norris to ask, firstly, do I need to go past? Because, again, drivers with that maturity at such a young age, it's tremendous. I don't think they robbed him, per se.
Yeah, I think rob is a very, very, very tough word, very aggressive word to use, I think at the end, McLaren did what they felt was right. They, of course, saw the situation that was brewing. Everyone was worried about Bottas and his medium tires. Would the tires run out before the number of laps too? That was literally the thinking that McLaren was going through, And then it was great that Checo Perez held Bottas as well. So I definitely don't think they robbed him in any way. And was Verstappen lighter on Ricciardo? Again, I don't think so. I don't think Verstappen is light on anyone, including himself. I think he's just as hard on every single driver that he races with, including the driver inside him, I'm sure.
Now that you've mentioned Max Verstappen, you know what? Let's actually get right to it. It's the defining moment of the season. Silverstone was something. This is just something else. Ted Kravitz on Sky Sports, I just love the man. He said we should just coin the phrase Verstappen and Hamilton go have a sprint race on Saturday and crash on Sunday, because that seemingly has been the case all the time. Watch out for Interlagos if you are into betting, which I don't think you should be. Put your money on them, right? For Interlagos, maybe this is going to happen. But all things considered, Kunal, this is just... Firstly, let me compose my thoughts for a second. What I mean to say is, thank goodness for the halo. You can never, ever, ever doubt it again. Just the visual, just the sight of seeing Verstappen's rear wheel on Hamilton's shoulder, even with the halo, was quite something. And Martin Brundle on commentary was recollecting a moment where Ayrton Senna also had a similar moment with him back in the day, but Senna's car was actually revving at the background. We should be lucky that Max wasn't doing that. That is a frightening thing. So, good things first, safety, everything worked, that was perfect, but what was not perfect, Kunal? All this happened. In a way, it's perfect for Formula 1. We all need these moments, right? In a rivalry like Senna versus Prost, like Schumacher versus Hakkinen. We need moments like this one, and we've got two of them with Verstappen versus Hamilton. Your thoughts? Penalty, just be totally honest. Just go for it.
Well, I think the FIA really needs to stop with the nonsense, in my view. I see it as a racing incident. And I really wish that neither driver was penalized. Of course, only one driver was penalized in the end. And the reason why I say this is, of course, everyone by now who's interested in Formula One and the crash and the FIA and the way they dissected it, it's a very interesting dissecting they've done. They said who was ahead before, who was ahead after, what happened, what didn't happen. And I think this is the bane of technology in a lot of ways. You can literally slow it down to every frame and be like, on that square inch of the track, Lewis was 1/10 behind or whatever step ahead, and hence Max should have yielded. And I think that technology is great to have, when we really need to dissect and learn things. But in my view, when a driver is going for it, I don't think he or she is going to think just so much in that, I need to make sure I do this, I do that. Sometimes you just need to overtake or you just need to defend. And Max needed to do that. He knew that if Lewis went away, Lewis would just go. He would finish behind Lewis. So he was right in not wanting Lewis to go. And likewise with Lewis as well. Both drivers knew they had that one chance, and that opportunity came because of their slow stops or whatever it is else that happened, right? So I think Max was, of course, overambitious. I think Lewis did give him just about space as well. But was that enough space? That whole corner, the way the corner goes, with the turn one on the right, turn two on the left. I think just when you put all the factors in place, I don't think, the word predominantly is being misused out here, in my view again. And I just wish it was a racing incident. I think both drivers paid the penalty with a DNF. You can't get a bigger penalty than that. You're not scoring points for yourself, right? And just because they gave Lewis a 10-second whatever in Silverstone, they have now given Max a 3-place grid penalty because, of course, Max was out of the race. And, the only common thread in this, Sawmill, is that both times it was the driver attacking, it was the driver making a move that got penalized. And that's where I'm literally wondering, are the rules being so strictly put in place to avoid any sort of overtakes that go slightly over the line? Because on one end we are like, hey, let's design cars so that they can overtake, and now when we've got cars which you almost cannot overtake in, and if an overtake happens and it's a little bit of a question mark, you're like, Tong, that's a penalty. End of rant. Thank you.
You're right with that. Wasn't it Austria where we saw something similar like that happening to the driver trying to overtake as well? I don't get it. And it's a racing incident. Lewis could have left more space. Let's answer the questions that we got from all of you, dear listeners and viewers. One from Manav. It goes back to why we saw this happening. Manav is asking, Max forgot he's in a faster car. He could have had more chances to overtake ahead in that lap. You can't do that, right, in that case. When you see your major title rival slip up after a slow pit stop, much like you, of course, you have to get past. You just do. Max could have waited, but you can't tell that Max was faster. Lewis was just about as competitive, and there's always that variable with those compounds of tires after changing it, so you couldn't quite tell. And that here the moment really gets to him. But seriously, Gunal, Lewis could have left the space. Max could have been... I don't know what Max could have done. Seriously, I don't get it. Why? It's just beyond me. But
it's true. It's true what you're saying. What could have Max done? Max could have backed out. You're expecting a racing car driver to back out in the middle of two corners, in the middle of a technical, I wouldn't say, exactly. What should he have taken the runoff and then given the spot back to Lewis, and then do what every other driver did, give the spot away in a way that you can overtake the next corner? Should he have not attacked at all? I mean, Max was not in the quicker car in Monza, at least based on the data we saw. He was just unable to take the battle to the Mercedes cars right from qualifying, as we saw that. So he was right in wanting to make the most of the opportunity that came his way. And could he have made the overtake later? I don't know. I mean, you're in a high-speed sport. The stakes are so high. That's Lewis Hamilton. It's one of the most difficult drivers to overtake. Why are we expecting people to wait? If in cricketing parlance, if the ball is out there to hit for a 6, you want your batsman to hit it for a 6.
Spot on. And why would they back out? Why would they? If in a situation like this you expect drivers to back out, something is fundamentally wrong with the sport. And the penalty like this one sets a precedent like that in such situations you should wait and play the longer game. Really? Why do we watch the sport in the first place? Hey, we could go on and on. Let's answer.
I'm gonna just say, what you just said, just last point.
Yep.
The whole waiting game thing, Monza. Let's address this point. And we said it in the studio that we had, the pre-race studio and the post-race studio actually, right, on VIA Sport. Monza, Temple of Speed. The highlight of this race is the toe. We said toe. 3 things to look out for this Grand Prix weekend. We were expecting cars to slipstream by with so much ease, and then of course the wretched DRS wing. But guess what? It was actually difficult to overtake in Monza. That's how the cars have been designed. So on one hand, we're giving drivers cars which are so difficult to overtake in, and then on the second hand, when they actually try and make an overtake, and you of course have to try, right? And something goes a little wrong, you're like, doing, that's a penalty. And again, end of rant.
Don't design a bus of a car. I still have a problem with the 2022 car. It is so long. You don't need a car that's so long. They're backing it up by data. So I'm not an expert. I'm just sitting here in my bedroom, but you don't need a car that's supposed to be so long. It doesn't help with the racing. You can see. Hey, apparently they don't like racing, do they? Let's focus more on the other questions. I know I've said it twice, but there are a few interesting ones. Vinayak and Shilp, of course, asked what we just discussed, our opinions on the crash. T2M3D9, that's a bit of an interesting username. He said, Max is at fault, but not malicious. He doesn't hit the curb. There's no such crash, in my opinion. Racing incident? I guess so. I really guess so. But finally, Kunal, before we move on to the stats by Sundaram, those curbings were not nice. You don't want to see a car flipped up like that. That is vicious. It reminds me of this Formula 3 crash we had in 2019. I don't remember the driver, one of the Australian ones with really frizzy hair, forgot his name, launched up at Parabolica now, Curva Alboreto. Now we see Max launch up in such a dangerous position, I'm sorry. I don't think sausage curves are the right way, right? You just put a natural blockade and you can't. I mean, as a driver, you have to respect it. If you go past, just stop and let the other guy go past. More on that with Sergio Perez, but yes, your thoughts.
I mean, I can't think curves right now. I can't think sausages. I'm vegan, as you guys know. But yes, Max did get, he of course, it was a weird thing that happened to his car. It's like what you see at the end of an aircraft carrier, that which helps you take off. Could he have backed off? Yeah, well, maybe he's thinking that. Should he have just taken the points? He's been in the lead. I don't know. Who do you think is the big loser? I think the big loser in all of this is Lewis Hamilton because, he's still behind on points and he scored no points.
That's a good one. Team-wise, Red Bull Racing still. I will tell this more in a few minutes when we come to Sergio Perez. But driver-wise, nothing ventured, nothing gained, to be honest. Max could have had a bit of a worse race. Again, more frustrated with that slow stop. Really can't tell. It freezes the championship. It's good for Formula 1. Controversy brings more people into the sport. As you rightly mentioned, Kunal, a couple of episodes ago on Silverstone. But this is just weird. It's good for the sport, let's put it that way. But bad for the sport at the same time in the way that racing is discouraged. Hey, enough on that one. We could go on for hours on this. But we've got something special on the way for you. And you probably know this by this point. It's the stats review by Sundaram, who is also known as F1 Stats Guru. Let's go right into this. And there's a bit of a surprising one coming up. So listen in and enjoy.
All right, it's time to do the stats review of that Italian Grand Prix. A very, very chaotic, crazy, and controversial race. I'm sure people are going to be talking about this Grand Prix for the weeks and years to come, just because of how the championship battle is boiling over at this point of time. So these sort of races usually just tend to bring out a lot of stats, and I have a bunch of those. And here are a few for this particular race. So let's jump straight into it. Let's talk about the man of the moment, the driver of the day, Daniel Ricciardo. He takes his first race win since Monaco 2018. That's 3 years ago. Now, if you remember, Monaco 2018 was a race of redemption because he unfortunately lost that particular race a couple of years ago. That was a race of redemption. And today also seems like a race of redemption because he's had a couple of difficult years with Renault and starting off this season as well. And the man is finally, the guy is finally back once again on the podium. This was his 8th race win, and each of those race wins in Formula One have come at different Grand Prix at different circuits, which is very, very interesting. And McLaren have taken their first race win since 2012. This was their first double podium since Australia 2014, and their first race 1-2 since 2010 Canada. They're also the first team this year to take a race 1-2. Mercedes did a bunch of those in 2020, but unfortunately they could not do that this year. And McLaren are the first team to finally, start the score this year, and they are the first team to do so, which is great. I think seeing a team like McLaren once again on the top step of the podium, it's very, very heartwarming, knowing how iconic and historic this particular team is. And I'm just hoping that we see a lot of McLaren on the podium for the rest of the season and beyond. All right, so we have to talk about the podium today was also very interesting. We had 3 Mercedes-powered cars, and the last time that happened, where a Mercedes or an engine supplier completely took a clean sweep of the podium, was back in 2015 at the Mexican Grand Prix, which is again a Mercedes-powered podium. Lewis Hamilton, he suffered a race retirement for the first time since the 2018 Austrian Grand Prix, which is 63 races ago. And the one before that was that Malaysian Grand Prix back in 2016. So over the course of 5 years, he's had just 2 race retirements, which is great. Speaks a lot about Hamilton's consistency and how regular he's been in the point. Red Bulls, Red Bulls, three of the four Red Bulls today did not score points. Yuki Tsunoda did not start the race. Pierre Gasly had an early retirement. And as we all know, Max Verstappen also had to retire from the race because of that little collision with Lewis Hamilton towards somewhere in the middle of the race. And lastly, Fernando Alonso, he finally scored points at the Italian Grand Prix because the last time he scored points at this particular venue was back in 2013. First time he scored points at Monza in the hybrid era. So those were the stats for the Italian Grand Prix. These are just a bunch of them. There's going to be a lot more in the stats rundown article, which is going to go up on the website in a couple of days. So do watch out for that, and I'll catch you guys at the Russian Grand Prix.
I had to pinch myself for a second again there. I didn't realize that no team has taken a 1-2 this year. Magic of the F1 stats guru, folks. Follow him on all his social handles down below. This is a little bit crazy, all the things that we're getting right here, all the stats from Sundaram. But let's for a second speak about Valtteri Bottas, shall we, Kunal? I know we are not supposed to bring in the sprint too much here, but his sprint performance was flawless, even in qualifying, bringing out that big lap. Missed it by a little bit in the main race. There's one question here from Veshaka, if I pronounce it correctly. Please, my apologies for butchering it. They've asked, is this possibly the race Valtteri will be most proud of when he looks back at his Mercedes career? There's a chance. On the individual level, Kunal, this was just phenomenal. Watching his comeback, it was almost like Sergio Perez in a way.
I think Valtteri did a phenomenal race through the whole weekend. He got pole, he won the F1 sprint. Let's remember, he had enough pace to actually win the race. Had he not taken that grid penalty because of the power unit change and whatever else, he would have won the Grand Prix. But of course, could have, would have, should have. And what impressed me the most is the fact that he started at the back of the grid. He gained 16 positions to finish in third place. And I think that is phenomenal, right? And here's the fun stat. Valtteri Bottas, and I'm saying it in the English way, right? He had the least number of overtakes in the whole season for any driver. He had only 17 overtakes. And guess the number of overtakes he has actually added at the Italian Grand Prix. He's almost doubled it, I would say, right? So very impressive performance, at least, given how long it's been since his race win, and he's still not won a race this season, right? It definitely seems as a very, very memorable race for Valtteri. And maybe he could have won if there was no Checo Perez out there. That's probably the question that I asked myself all along, saying, could this have been Valtteri's race if Checo Perez would have been cleared much before? And could Valtteri, or did he have enough pace to take to the McLarens?
I don't think it was drop-off because his fastest lap came in and all of a sudden there was a bit of peace and calm. Drop-off is not that ridiculous unless you teleport yourself back to 2013. But that's Valtteri Bottas. Could have been, but you get a feeling. You feel like he's liberated now. And that is amazing to watch. You feel like he's pressureless. He can go up there, enjoy himself like all drivers would. That's fun to watch, Kunal, isn't it? And we've got a few more races where you can see that element of Bottas again now.
Yeah, at the start of the episode, I said it's difficult to overtake in Monza. It was, and we were, talking about the car and being a little cynical about it and so on, right? So we should have added this caveat that it's difficult to overtake in Monza unless you're Valtteri Bottas, right? And I must say this. So this is my observation. F1 released simulation data which said that your pace advantage needed to be about a second a lap for you to have a higher probability of making an overtake in Monza. And that's pretty high, if you ask me, right? Which means that, you're, of course, then relying on DRS to help you make the overtake. That's my reading of their simulation. Now, Valtteri Bottas could overtake every other car, and he got stuck behind a Checo Perez, where he probably did not have that 1 second pace advantage. And then, of course, even the McLarens, were fast, and Lewis did not have that pace advantage to take on them as well. So McLaren's, of course, being quick, but Valtteri Bottas did fantastic to get himself onto the podium. And he actually radioed the team, I told you so. I told you we could finish on the podium.
And he said it was his target coming into this weekend as well. Tremendous stuff. But again, you can't even get closer to the cars. What happens? The tires go off. I don't get it. Hey, Sergio Perez, his race was interesting. Genuinely, it's a squandered chance. Let's be 100% honest, Kunal. Let's not mince our words, anything quite like that. This is Sergio Perez's race to win. If Verstappen and Hamilton have issues, if even Bottas is not where he should be in terms of starting grid, why is anyone else even having a chance to win this race? Sergio Perez is in a car that could win the title potentially at the end of the year. Why is he not there? And with Pierre Gasly putting in performance after performance after performance and now openly even questioning the senior team's decision to not go with him, I think it's fair to ask. This has to be one of the biggest squandered chances of the year. It should have and it could have and it would have been him had just his qualifying been slightly better.
Exactly. He's struggled in qualifying, and that's what did Checo Perez in this weekend. But I think, he ticked off two very important boxes. And these are, of course, things when you observe, F1 with a little more closed filter up, right? One of the first ones is he helped Max Verstappen get a tow in qualifying, which meant that he actually was disadvantaged in his Q3 run. So that's one. So that's one of the reasons why he wasn't as quick. He was up ahead, punching a hole through the air so that Max could get a higher advantage, right? And this was in Q3 in qualifying, right? And the second thing was what we saw today. So even though he did not win, I think he played a part in at least not letting Valtteri Bottas chase the McLarens for a win. So that's also something Red Bull would appreciate, saying you actually blocked Mercedes from taking a win. And then, of course, eventually he was off the podium because of his own penalty that he picked up for a pretty silly reason, I would say.
No, I think it's like trying to defend something. It's like basically when you head out without an umbrella in the rain and it doesn't rain. So you tell your mom, hey, but it didn't rain. That's what I did today. But that's not the main point. I mean, the main point is if you're in the second best car, you should be the one winning, right? Of course, the original intention when the situation was okay was to, of course, block off Bottas and the rest. But I think he even got a tow from Gasly in the second one, didn't he? Because there were two qualifying runs. One where they got the best lap time. The other one where Perez was at the back of the queue. But it still didn't work out. It still baffles me a little bit.
Yeah, all I'm reacting to is that, the data that I had, and Christian Horner actually came back on the radio after Perez's run saying something Checo, but thanks for giving Max a tow. So that's where I did take my reading from. I don't know if Gasly actually gave him a tow or he benefited from one in itself, Somil.
Let's wait and watch. You've got a feel for Pierre Gasly. Where does he go next? He's an AlphaTauri for now, at least. And with Red Bull, you can't even say if it's for the whole year. So let's wait and watch. Their rivals in the midfield, Ferrari. Oh, man, they were thwarted. All things considered, Kunal, this has to be the worst Ferrari result that they could have ever expected on home soil, apart from McLaren having a 1-2 and Ferrari getting a DNF. Just hit big time. And it could have been them as well, just marginally away from it.
It could have been, eventually they had just about enough pace to be ahead of the midfield scrap, Aston Martin, Alpine, and so on. But they did not have the pace to take it to the McLaren team. So all in all, it was just one of those races where Ferrari would have thought, home race, let's enjoy it. Let's give the Tifosi something, and then just get as many points in the bag and not lose too much ground to McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. And Somil, after the safety car and so on, Leclerc was second, I think, because of, he got gifted a pit stop under the safety car. And it just showed that they did not have the pace to remain in contention with the Red Bulls, Mercedes cars, and the McLarens as well. So it was just, you got to take what you get. And then to eventually, land up in fifth and sixth, or no, there was fourth and sixth, of course, after Perez's, penalty. It was probably the best that Ferrari could have gotten today.
There's a few good questions. One from Raveen Kapoor, who's come in and asked, could Ferrari have pushed harder for the podium? It's Monza after all, and they could have shown some fight. Of course, Kunal just answered that right now. And there's one from Aditya. It's a bit of a ruthless one, this. Why does Sainz always start like a spineless loser, always giving away positions? Yikes, that's a heavy one. I wouldn't call that a spineless loser, but I mean, that said, even Hamilton had a few bad starts. That doesn't make him a spineless loser, does it? It's a bit of a harsh term to use, but starts are hard. Starts really are hard in the midfield, and that's where Ferrari and Sainz always get up mixed in, I guess.
Well, okay. We are going to address this with data. We speak to our in-house data expert Nityanand to find out just how many positions which driver has lost or gained through all the 14 races of the season, and then we'll know is it signs that we can literally term as whatever the viewer has termed signs as. Again, that's a very harsh criticism, but to each his own.
I love the emotion the racing is bringing out from everybody. I really do. Keep it coming. This is what the sport should feel like. We often end up seeing this happening in football. We often end up seeing this happen in cricket. Not so much in Formula One until this year. It's all just spicing up right now. I love to see this. But of course, the final few questions before we go off air for today. It's been a long episode, but I hope you've had a good time. One from Vinayak, and this is a fairly interesting one. Is there something called a 7-time World Championship curse? No one can win more than that, seemingly. I guess there's only one way to find out at the end of the year, but Hamilton still is on the trot for it. It could go either way, but I don't think that exists. But again, there's only one way to find out, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just one way to find out. There are lots of curses. I don't believe in curses, to be honest. It's just... you get what you deserve, you get what you work for, and see Lewis Hamilton's working extremely hard for that world title, as is, of course, Max Verstappen.
One from Sahil Banatwala, and I love the excitement. Who won the Italian Grand Prix quali competition? I don't know, mate. We're getting an answer tomorrow. That's when everyone in our team will get together and find out who actually won. So keep a keen eye on that on the Pits To Podium and the Inside Line F1 podcast social channels. Link down in the description. And the final one from there. It's not particularly to the Monza Grand Prix, but I love this from Manav. He always comes up and poses such amazing questions. Winner, of course, of the first of the GP prediction competition. 10 teams with 3 seats or 15 teams with 2 seats. Context to Toto Wolff saying that he'd like to have 3 seats in the future. It's a good point. Just financially doesn't seem as feasible, does it, Kunal?
You know what? I've always been an advocate of 3-car Formula One teams, right? If they will figure the finances out. Figuring finances out is, in my view, the easier part, right? But I think if there's one way to have more talented drivers on the grid, it should be with 3-car teams in Formula One. And there are ways and means to structure it. Doesn't mean all teams have to run a 3rd car, and the ones that do, there are ways and means to figure it out in a way that it's like if Mercedes suddenly scores 1, 2, and 3 with those 3 cars, doesn't mean they, score as many points in the constructors. So there are ways and means to figure things out which are fairly distributed. But I think 20 cars, are definitely less when I see them racing, especially, when you see Formula 3 or Formula 2, and that's like a massive field, right? Of course, this is when a lot of people observing Formula 1 would say, what is this guy talking? The cars are so wide and long, and then suddenly instead of 20, he now wants 30 cars. But the truth is, just because the cars are out of proportion or obese right now, as we call them, doesn't mean we shouldn't have enough of them for all the exciting talent out there in the world, Samuel.
Let's do a role play. I'll be Formula One's management. You're wrong, Kunal. We can change the circuits, we can change the drivers, we can change the entire sport, but we won't change the cars. God forbid, whatever happens. But this is actually a very good point. They could work it out like MotoGP, have wildcard cars, so they don't have to be there for every race. You can just pick and choose when you want to have your 3rd car for your younger drivers. So, and the wildcard doesn't exactly count for constructors' points as well. So if, for instance, you could have out of an 18-round season, assuming there's 18, I love the number 18 for Formula 1 rounds, but say 6 races where you have 3 cars, maybe you could pick out which 6 races they are, and it could open up a bidding war for the 3rd seat at times, but that's a separate matter. Point is, there are far too many young drivers who are far more prepared than the previous generation who are missing out on this, and it'll be fun to see them have a chance, but seems like it's not on the agenda right now, so we've got to wait and watch. But Kunal, before we round off this episode, I'm going to put you on the spot. One word to describe Monza. Not Monza as a circuit, of course, but this particular race as a whole.
Phenomenal. Shui. That's the word.
Shui.
I must say, I almost thought that Daniel Ricciardo was not going to do the
Same.
shoey because he did it literally after like everyone thought, yeah, that's it, that's the podium, and where's the shoey? Oh, he's forgotten the shoey, and then he pulls out the shoey, and we had a grand affair with all the McLaren boys, and having a drink from the shoey. So shoey is my word the one word to describe this Grand Prix weekend, Samuel. And what about you?
Stunning. Because it was stunning. I was lost for words when I saw that accident, and I still am partially. So it just describes it properly. Stunning. But how did you like this episode, folks? We would like to know this from you. Leave a like, leave a comment, leave a share. Can you leave a share ever? Share this video and this podcast if you liked it. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching the Inside Line F1 podcast and Pits To Podium. You know the deal. Give a subscribe if you liked it. And we shall see you next week for another live stream, shall we? So be right here. Follow us on all our social channels to also find out the results of the pole position competition. Have a nice day, folks. Have a nice weekend. Enjoy. Have a good time. And don't forget to pour some alcohol in your shoe and have a drink if you're Australian, if you're having a good time. See you, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye.